Hello everyone, welcome. On behalf of my training, Leaders in Workplace Wellness, I would like to welcome you today to our 30-minute Lunch and Listen webinar on how to transform workplace anxiety into positive performance. And it's going to be presented by Julie Robertson, our expert mind trainer. I'm very happy to be your host. For those of you who I'm yet to meet, my name is Stacey and I'm the General Manager of My Training. My Training would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. I'm really looking forward to introducing you to Julie. However, before I do so, I'm just going to share some housekeeping regarding how today's session will flow. Today's webinar is a taster, or a sample if you like, of the 2-hour webinar that we are hosting exactly one fortnight from today on the 30th of March from 9 AM to 11 AM. And we will have Julie as your facilitator as well. As a registrant of today's Lunch and Listen webinar, you're going to receive a recording of today's session, as well as information on how you can reserve your spot in that upcoming 2-hour webinar. Julie is going to begin today by introducing our topic. She's going to share with you some tips on how you can recognize workplace anxiety. She's also going to share a tool with you that's going to help you to keep your anxiety at bay. In the 2-hour webinar, she's going to delve more deeply into these topics and provide greater detail around how you can get relief from worry and nerves and improve your efficiency and productivity in the workplace. Today, Julie's going to speak for about 20 minutes and then there'll be questions at the end. Due to the large number of participants we have joining us today and also our time frame, we're not going to be using the microphone to ask questions. So, however, you can use our chat function and I encourage you to jot down your questions throughout the entire presentation from Julie. I'm going to be monitoring those questions and I'll direct them to Julie at the end. So, without further ado, let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce Julie Robertson.
Thank you, Stacey. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up if you can. That looks good to me, that looks good. Welcome this morning, going into the afternoon. We only have 20 minutes together, so I'm going to move at a reasonably fast pace. If you have some way of taking some notes, that would be certainly beneficial. Although, like Stacey says, we are recording, so you can look back on this recording a little bit later. Now, a lot of my work involves a lot of elite athletes, and there's a certain system that they have in place to keep that kind of anxiety or nerves at bay. And one of those systems is what you're going to learn here this morning. Although what I wanted to mention as well, that in the course in a fortnight's time, like Stacey said, we'll be diving deeper into what's called the subconscious characteristics regarding anxiety and more nitty-gritty subconscious tools. Because today, really, the tool that I'm going to give you is more of a conscious awareness that you can put in place for yourself, for your team, for your kids, for anyone really, in any realm of life. So very exciting. I'm really thrilled to be able to, give you the information for this tool. So first and foremost, your conscious is kind of that discerning, questioning, rationalizing process in your mind. And then we have what's called our subconscious. Our subconscious is beating our heart without us even realizing it and breathing without us realizing it. Our subconscious's primary job is to protect any human being from harm. So it's on alert regarding any harmful or threats to the body or mind that come along. And what it will do is it will give us, every one of us, a sensation or feeling that doesn't feel right at all. In actual fact, for some, feels really horrible, like a heightened heart rate or light breath, or in worst case scenarios, panic attacks, etc. I'm going to go into that a little bit more later. What happens is that this is the subconscious's main job for us to, as human beings, to keep us safe. And so if you think of the mind of an athlete, or when we're performing in any way or form, we're putting ourselves on the line. We're stepping up into uncomfortable situations, whether they're uncomfortable physically, in other words, like an athlete, putting some real true effort in and feeling a lot of pain, or whether we feel it mentally. And so those feelings and sensations can really begin to overwhelm us as human beings. So basically what the subconscious is doing is checking in with different situations and scenarios with what we're doing. And as it checks in, it's searching for coping mechanisms to manage that situation. And if it can't find coping mechanisms for managing a situation, that's when the subconscious kicks in with those sensations and feelings that don't feel good at all. So what does this look like in the workplace? Well, you've got 3 ways of doing this overwhelm, not necessarily anxiety-based. Overwhelm, like I said, 3 ways. The first way your subconscious will go is apathy, lack of motivation. There's no point. What's the point? This is hopeless. Not being able to get out of bed in the morning. Depression. So lacking in motivation. Another one, which is something that I certainly work on myself with, is procrastination. You know yourself when you're procrastinating. At that point in time, you are overwhelmed. The subconscious is kicked in with a feeling and sensation to protect you from threat or harm, because you haven't got the coping mechanisms to manage at that time. That's all. There's nothing personal with this. The second way your subconscious will go is, cat on a hot tin roof, running around like a headless chook, not getting anything done. Worry, second guessing, overthinking, nerves, anxiety, and in extreme cases, panic attacks. So what does this look like in the workplace? Yeah, it's probably, I'm sure many of you have experienced that second guessing, overthinking, or those doubting thoughts about whether you can do this. That's overwhelm, that second way. The third way that the subconscious can go with those feelings and sensations of overwhelm is injury or illness. If I explain this to you regarding an athlete is usually highly motivated. An athlete has usually, although some do need some help because they have decided that it's perfectly normal to vomit before performance, which to me is something completely too much and overwhelming. But an athlete would be able to manage nerves to a certain extent and those anxious feelings and be able to control those nerves. The third way is injury or illness. The subconscious can't go the other 2 ways, so it produces injury or illness for that human being. Now, what does that look like? it looks like a nagging lower back injury that seems to rear its ugly head when life is stressful. Or it could be a recurring illness, particularly autoimmune illnesses like chronic fatigue or glandular fever, for instance. That's how it works. That's how the subconscious works. Now, as we go through this, please, if you've got any questions in the chat box, let me know. Just chat in there with your questions as we go through. So I'm thinking peak performance, positive performance. We're all human beings. We have to step up. We have to put ourselves on the line, just in the same way that I'm doing it right now for you. So there's a certain sense of protecting ourselves. And what athletes have learnt to do is be aware of their nerves, like a scale, so to speak. So 0 being no nerves and 10 being so much nerves that they're vomiting before performance. And so an athlete is very, very realistic, because of course, if they're behind the blocks or on the blocks or in the cool room and they have 0 nerves, absolute 0 nerves, and then of course there's no care or attention to what they're doing. So in the same way that if I'm preparing for this talk for you today and I'm standing before the talk and I've got 0 nerves, and then of course I'm not presupposing a good performance. I need a certain level of nerves, maybe 4 or 5 out of 10, that will presuppose a great performance. Hopefully you'll find that by the end of this session. So here's the key. It's being aware of being human regarding peak performance and making sure that you're sitting around that 4, 5 out of 10 when you're stepping up to do something special. And that lets your subconscious know that you care, that you're invested, and your intentions are to step up and own this situation. Now, what I've noticed is, this is the tool that I'm gonna kind of go through with you now. It's a beautiful tool. It's, let me just check. It's from a man called Dr. Stephen Krauss. That's K-R-A-U-S, Stephen with a PH, Dr. Stephen Krauss. And I have to say, when I learned this tool, I was absolutely thrilled, because I realized, that most of my elite athletes that I work with pretty much do this already. So in other words, the most successful people on this planet are those that are most creative. And so they're using tools and ways and skills and all these kind of magical creative investment in their world to produce those performances. So this is called the 5 components of success. It's awesome. And what I love about it is there's only 5. In other words, there's not a list of 20 that we have to take on in our lives. There's only 5. And what I like about it even more than that is, if you do number 1, you're going to be more successful in your life. If you do number 1 and number 2, you're going to be even more successful. If you do 1, 2, and 3, you're starting to become on fire. If you do 1, 2, 3, and 4, well, my goodness, there's nothing stopping you. But if you do all 5, you're heading into guru status in life, in whatever you do. So I'm sure you want to know what they are. They're very, very simple. Number 1 is, we all as human beings need a goal. Stands to reason. So If you're between 0 and 10 on the anxiety scale for performance, yeah, or any other area in your life that you're struggling with, yeah, and your anxiety is hitting like 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10, your goal would be to lower that number. Your goal also needs to be a vision. Now, vision, what do I mean by vision? What do I mean by kind of corporate vision? I'm not talking about a corporate vision here. I'm talking about the kind of way that you see yourself behaving 3, 4 out of 10 when you perform, instead of creating on the inside 8, 9, 10 out of 10. A vision literally is a sense of what you see yourself doing on the inside of your mind. A vision is creating a movie screen on the inside of your mind and seeing yourself on that movie screen doing the behaviors that will give you your goal. It's exciting, really exciting. But why do we do that? What's the reason behind doing this number 1 out of the 5 components of success? Well, the reason behind it is that the subconscious doesn't know the difference between real or imagined experiences when there's a sensation and feeling to the experience, to the imagination of that experience. So I have clients, athletes that come and see me, and I have them have a, what's the word? A inner experience. They close their eyes and they have an inner experience of following through on the behaviors that will create their goal. And I'm talking about the kind of goals that would be gold medals, world records, etc. And what happens is these athletes, they will start to twitch. Their heart rate will go up. Their temperature will go up. And some will be so overwhelmed with the most beautiful and wonderful sensations of the realization that they're going to get their goal by doing these behaviors, they will cry. That's what I mean by a vision. Please write down any questions regarding number 1 of the components of success, goal, vision. Number 2, now this is super simple. Number 2 is you need a strategy in place. You can't just have a goal without a strategy. You need to know how to do things. Now, wonderfully so, the subconscious, and let's be honest, anxiety is a subconscious response. It's not a conscious response, it's subconscious. So we need to work with the subconscious regarding this, yeah? So the subconscious, one of its main characteristics as well is modeling. It loves to copy, and it will copy others doing anxiety. I had a young boy come and see me, 11 years old, just the other day, and he's suffering with tics. And unfortunately, all his friends suffer with tics too. So it's contagious. It's kind of like this system of anxious responses. What was interesting was I alerted him, this 11-year-old boy, to the strategy of starting to copy and model excellence. In other words, he left me, and now he's beginning to go out there and begin to copy and model those that are not doing tics, so that he works out what coping mechanisms he needs to learn and the strategies he needs to put in place so that he's feeling more comfortable. So this is number 2. You need a strategy in place. You need to learn new coping mechanisms for managing performance. I just didn't decide, let's get up and do this for my gas. There's been a strategy. I have learnt how to present. And believe me, public speaking causes most of the world's anxious feelings. But there is a strategy to follow with public speaking. And if you learned how to do it, then of course that strategy is put into place, ready for the future. It's not necessarily about the content, it's the delivery. So that's number 2. Any questions? Fire them down in the chat on the strategy. Number 3 is one of my favorites. Number 3 is belief. The third component of success is belief. Now, belief is really interesting to me because most sports coaches, most team leaders, most parents, most coaches, life coaches, they say to us, you've got to believe in yourself, or you've got to have self-belief. But no one really tells you the how-to or the strategy to it. Now, that would be another course to do in the future, because belief is truly magical and beliefs can be changed just like that. Just in the same way that you guys, I hope, don't believe in Santa or Tooth Fairy. Okay, they're beliefs that you changed over time. But the way that I want you to think about beliefs for the 5 components of success is knowing you can do it. When you know you can do it, that's belief. Now, for some, that might be a little bit strong. So, for instance, if I was learning to juggle, for instance, I wouldn't know that I would know how to do it. I just wouldn't, I mean, I can't juggle. Yeah, I'd be awful at it. But the one thing I do know and that I do believe is that I can learn how to do it. That's belief. So belief, you know, if you know how to do a skill and you've really hammered into that skill, there's the knowing how to do it. You can do it. But if you know you can learn how to do something new, then that gives you also that belief and that self-belief. There's 2 levels. I hope I've explained that okay. Again, questions in the chat. Number 4, we ready for number 4? Okay, number 4 is persistence. Persistence is really easy. Persistence is just giving yourself time to learn how to do these things. Too many of us go, I should know how to do this just like that. And we give up. Okay? If there was a little baby learning to walk, we wouldn't say, time's up. You can't do it. Yeah? We would give them that time to learn how to do it. Okay, that's easy. Ready for number 5 again? Chat questions. Number 5 is my all-time favorite because, of course, it's guru status. Yeah. Number 5 is the feedback loop. Okay, the feedback loop. Now, what I do know about my experience in sport is that after each and every performance, the athlete goes straight to their coach for feedback. And that is put into place in sports from very, very young age. But what's interesting is when we become grown-ups, we don't tend to do this. Yeah, we've got to make sure that we use the feedback loop so that we go back up to number 1. When we go back up to number 1, we can adjust the goal. You might need more stepping stones to that goal, or you might need to adjust the vision on the inside of your mind. You also need to use a feedback loop to go back up to number 2. Because of course, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. I'm sure you've heard that before. So you need to change the strategy. The feedback loop takes you back to number 3. Are you checking in to make sure that you know you can learn how to do it? And then, of course, the feedback loop goes back to number 4, which is persistence. In other words, you need to give yourself some more time to learn how to do it. Now, too many of us are not using these beautiful, wise ways of working in our world. And when we're not using these wise, successful ways, it makes us achievement-based. And so it produces that pressure, that expectation of performance and anxiety and overwhelm in other ways that I spoke about earlier. So please write in those questions. I'm just going to summarize. Remember, 5 components of success. If you haven't written them down, you can certainly use this recording to recap on it. Now, in the 2-hour course in a couple of weeks' time, we're deep diving seriously into the most wonderful subconscious tool, because I'm sure many of you do a little bit of second guessing, a little bit of worry, a little bit of overthinking. Maybe you do a lot of overthinking and just waste a lot of time in your life with that rumination. And so in which case, what you can do subconsciously is learn how to control that. And I'll be doing that in a few weeks' time. So please feel free to join me.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was
welcome.
A wonderful framework that outlined the 5 components of success. We do have some time for some questions, and I do have a question that I'd like to ask you. Before I do, just a reminder for those that came in a little late, you will get a recording of the session and also information on how you can register for that 2-hour webinar. Okay, Julie, a question for you. In relation to technique 1, what would be an example of a behavior that you could visualize? For example, if your goal or vision was to lower your anxiety at work, what would you visualize?
What a great question. That is awesome. You can make it, well, the more detailed you make that vision, the better. So just as much as maybe on the inside of your mind, you might vision or create situations that don't feel good, you need to be visioning more situations where you're actually seeing yourself on the movie screen, calm, relaxed in that situation. In other words, the more you can create the feelings of calmness to the vision on the movie screen of your mind, the better. How you do this is you could maybe make sure that that vision is beautifully colorful. Make sure that the sounds are either muted or soft. Yeah. And of course, you would want it right in front of you like you're at the movies. That's all that needs to happen, is using that creativity to produce that vision of the behaviors that you want to see yourself doing, coping in a different way with different responses in different situations. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you, Julie. And just one more question before we go. With number 4, persistence, any tips around giving yourself enough time to do the things that you need to do in a workplace setting?
Oh, certainly. Well, we're hitting on a different area here, and this is boundaries. Yes. Also, as well, prioritizing. So what's important to you? So for us, sometimes as human beings, yeah, we have to get right down in the doo-doo poo before we suddenly decide this is a priority, and then we put it at the top of the list. So for persistence, yes, giving yourself the amount of time to do these things, yeah, to me is about making sure that you're valuing this change. It becomes a priority, but also that you're creating boundaries with yourself first and foremost to fit that in as time during your day, so that you're giving yourself time to learn how to do these things. I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Julie. That's probably going to wrap us up for today. I really appreciate you being here for our 30-minute lunch and listen. On behalf of my training, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at the 2-hour webinar in a fortnight's time. Have a great day, everyone.
Wonderful. Bye-bye, everyone. All the best.
Bye, Julie. Thank you.